if you're going to go to 2 tight end sets and Dallas Goedert is still going to be on the field, as good as Dallas Goedert is at blocking, if you want to send him out into the pattern, well, then you're going to expect the other guy who's out there in a 2 tight end set to block. And I don't know that that's going to be Grant Calcaterra's strong suit. I think he's going to be a pass-catching tight end. And usually when you go 2 tight ends, either you're running the ball and you expect both of them to block, or you're going to send only one of them out in the pattern. And anytime I'm sending a tight end out in the pattern and Dallas Goedert is on the field, I want him to be that guy. So I'm going to look to the other guy to do the dirty work and the blocking, and that's not Calcaterra's strong suit. John McMullen, Jody McDonald, your Mac Birds 365 guys here. Appreciate you streaming in with us on Birds 365. Appreciate Rob Ellis and his Kerry Williams love joining us for a spot today.
Always good to get a Kerry Williams reference, Jody. Always.
He opened the door and I walked through it. And we've got another good guest hopefully coming up. Connor Orr, Sports Illustrated national writer, is going to jump aboard with us hopefully in the next 20 plus minutes. So keep it right here. I asked a question to Rob and then I posed it again before we went to break. Johnny Mac, you know what I'm referring to. Howie Roseman spoke yesterday. 2-part question. Number one, as I stated with Rob and with you, any fear that Howie might just get a little itchy and do something that doesn't really need to be done because he's done such a good job this offseason? And number two, anything else that Howie said that intrigued you yesterday? He got up there on the podium with Coach Sirianni before practice started. Anything that he said that made you go,
I think the biggest thing I brought up was the safety position. He rarely singles out particular players. And with Kayvon Wallace, just looking at the transcript and the break, the exact quote was Kayvon needs to take a bigger step. So that is always sort of, I raise my eyebrow when I hear that. And then for the position as a whole, he said, it's like every position, we'll evaluate it and constantly be on the lookout to improve the roster. Team building is a constant thing here. I don't know if there's any position I would say, hey, we're good. That's the nature of Howie Roseman. By the way, I think that's a good thing. Yeah. You know, you see the back end of the roster churn constantly. They signed 3 guys yesterday. Lance Lenoir, Jaden Graham, and Cameron Tom, I believe, the center. They're probably not going to make the team, but they're constantly churning. They're constantly looking for potential upgrades or potential players that might have a trait that they could develop. I think I never criticize him for that. I think it's a really good thing. As far as splashy moves, I think it's wait and see on Bates for everybody because the Bengals don't want to give him up, number one. It would cost tremendously. I think the Eagles want to look at, hey, maybe Kayvon Wallace figures it out. Maybe Marcus Epps figures it out. Maybe it's better than people think it is. And then there's Rager and Dillard and those types of guys who might be moved because you kind of know. Well, certainly in Dillard's case, you kind of know he's out of here next year, good or bad. If you need him or not, he's out of here. So, at what point does that come to fruition where you say, all right, maybe we got to move him because we're going to lose him. And maybe LaRaven Clark is good enough. Or maybe you start thinking about compensatory picks. That's also what GMs do. Maybe Howie's like, we're going to lose more people than we're going to get next year. Maybe he gets a half decent deal. You get a comp pick. So a lot of things in play when it comes to that. But hey, he has a history of making trades in August that we know of. And some of them are pretty high profile.
Right. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah. Ronald Darby, probably the biggest. People forget that was a pretty big deal at the time because you're giving up Jordan Matthews, who people thought was a really good receiver, was more of a high volume guy. And I think it was a third round pick, wasn't it, Jody? So that's pretty significant to get Ronald Darby. And Ronald got hurt. Then he came back. They won the Super Bowl. He's always looking to do something, always.
Let me ask you about a specific question because you mentioned the three guys that the Eagles signed yesterday, quote unquote, bottom of the roster guys. Yeah, that's how I would describe them too. Jaden Graham, tight end, that played with the Falcons, a couple other teams, has like I think 12 career receptions during his time in the last few years here in the NFL. Surprise guy showing up on the pup yesterday was Rich Rod. Didn't know that he was dealing with an injury.
Yeah, I didn't know either. I still don't know.
Okay. I didn't know if you did. If you had known, I'd ask you to tell me. But if you don't, then that's fine. Was that part of why Jaden Graham was signed, that they knew that this was a possibility? Because that is, if Howie's looking to do something, just me, and I'm not here to suggest Howie, but if he's listening, so be it. If he's still looking to upgrade, Jaden Graham is somewhere between 80 and 100 as far as roster goes. And if you're over 100, you're not going to be making the team. You're not even going to be on the practice squad. So you get the point I'm trying to make. Backup tight end. And I'll get your just quick read on Calcaterra in practice yesterday. But if, God forbid, Dallas Goedert goes down, the Eagles are screwed. Because the drop-off between him and whoever's going to replace him is probably bigger than anywhere else on the team. I mean, number one spot that if you lose your guy, he's done for the season. Now we've got a much significantly less talented player in the position. That's probably the biggest drop-off on the team. So if you could get someone that if Goddard goes down and done for the year, all right, there's a drop-off. There's no question. We're not going to be able to go out and get reunite the Kelsey brothers. That's not happening here. Yeah. But maybe the drop-off isn't as bad. A couple of things there. How does Graham fill into the, all right, worst case scenario, we could put him into the lineup thing? How did Calcaterra look? And do you think there is any chance that that's a position that Howie addresses?
Yeah, I've been talking about it for a while. You know, I agree with you. I think that's the biggest drop-off depth-wise on this entire team. Dallas Goedert to the tight end too, whoever that is, whomever it ends up being. So we knew Tyree Jackson was going to be on the PUP list. So you also put Richard Rodgers. So all of a sudden you need a body. So I could see Jaden Graham being everything from just that to being, and the guy I immediately thought of was Alex Ellis, if you remember him, who came in during the Doug Peterson era, had played a little bit in Jacksonville, and they brought him in during camp, and we said, all right, this is just a camp body. And he ended up making the team and playing a few games and, you know, kind of bounced back and forth, practice squad, making the team, playing a little bit. I could see Jaden Graham being everything from that sort of scale, everything from a camp body because they need a body because two guys are hurt, to a guy who's going to make this football team because he's been in Atlanta for 4 years. I mean, doesn't play a lot, but he seems to understand. Obviously, he's from Yale, so you kind of know he's very smart. So he's going to pick up that part of it. And they just need a player. And you bring up Grant Calcaterra, positive first signs, look really, really good as a receiver. And that's what he is.
And he wore the Kazoo helmet too, right?
Yeah. The tight ends wore the Kazoo helmets as well. So, and, it's shouldn't joke about Grant's concussion history, but he did go to Pittsburgh. And Dr. Joseph Maroon is out there, who has been the longtime Steelers team physician and is one of the leading concussion specialists in the country. I forget the name of the doctor. I'll try to look it up in our next break, but somebody works closely with Dr. Maroon, cleared Grant, and that's why he came back to play football. So it's not like he just woke up one day and said, I feel good. He went to some of the top concussion specialists in the country and got cleared. Um, so that part of it, I think, is a little bit overblown because, I think he retired more because he was scared, more because he picked up the newspaper. Well, kids don't pick up the newspaper, picked up his iPhone and started reading some of the stories about how dangerous concussions were. And he just said, I don't want to deal with this. I'll go in a different direction. And then when he did start to get a little bit more educated and he went to experts in the field, they said, no, you're fine. There's nothing wrong. People have had far worse issues than you and continued to play safely. So that's one thing. But so that's if you were going to ask me today, what is today? July 28th, Jody. Who's going to be the backup tight end for the Eagles? I'd say Grant Calcaterra. From the options given to me. Now, I still think at the cut down to 53, the Eagles might look at that waiver wire and say, you know what, this guy could give us more than Calcaterra early in his career, Jack Stoll or whomever, and go that route. Or you're right, if some team has a surplus of tight ends, Howie might not even want to deal with the waiver wire and say, I'll give you a 7th round pick. I'll give you a 6th round pick. I'll give you Jalen Reagor. Maybe it's a player for player trade. So I could definitely see them doing something at tight end.
Here's my take on Calcaterra and how he fits into the Eagle tight end room. And I said this on the night he was drafted, despite the fact that I knew when he was in Oklahoma, he was a very talented wide receiver, but had to step away because of the concussions, came back, looked good, but not as good as he did at Oklahoma. Here was my only downside concern. He wasn't, and I don't think he will be, and you couldn't see it yesterday in the workout despite having his well-protected helmet on. Nobody's hit anybody. So there was no contact ongoing. If you're going to go to 2 tight end sets, and Dallas Goedert is still going to be on the field, as good as Dallas Goedert is at blocking, if you want to send him out into the pattern, well, then you're going to expect the other guy who's out there in a 2 tight end set to block. And I don't know that that's going to be Grant Calcaterra's strong suit. I think he's going to be a pass-catching tight end. And usually when you go 2 tight ends, either you're running the ball and you expect both of them to block, or you're going to send only one of them out in the pattern. And anytime I'm sending a tight out in the pattern and Dallas Goedert is on the field, I want him to be that guy. So I'm going to look to the other guy to do the dirty work and the blocking, and that's not Calcaterra's strong suit. So that was my only reserve with the fact that when they picked him, I thought it was still good value in the round that they picked him, but does he serve the role that you would think would the second tight end would mostly fit on this Eagle team with Goedert being number 1?
Yeah, I've talked about that before as well, Jody. It concerns me because, Dallas Goedert is such a good blocker. And the Eagles graded him the best blocking tight end in the NFL last year, and they're not the only ones. There are very few people who can block at tight end like Dallas Goedert. So it's not like you can say Jack Stoll can do the blocking. I mean, Dallas is better. Dallas is a better blocker. But he's also a great receiver. And if you keep him in line, it means you're using him less as a flex receiver. Now, the positives, you could say, well, now you have A.J. Brown, so now you can keep him inside a little bit more. You don't need him as much as a receiver. I'd prefer to have him as a receiver as well. There is a redundancy with Calcaterra because Calcaterra is not going to be a blocker. So you're right. And that's one of those things where Dallas, probably doesn't know it, but It'd probably be better for him if he wasn't as good a blocker as he is. It's just
you better not let him hear you say that, because he takes a lot of pride in his ability to.
Well, it's funny, when they drafted, he never blocked at South Dakota State, never, because he was, one of their best receivers. The Eagles didn't know he could block, and then he shows up, and they're like, "Oh my God, this guy! He just has a knack for it, and he's willing. That's half the battle.
That is half the battle."
And he just really, really took to it. And yeah, but you're not going to find a better blocker than Dallas Goedert in the modern game. Obviously, there have been in the past. Dr. Michael Collins, by the way, Grant Calcaterra. So, but I just want to clarify, because a lot of people have said this. He didn't have to retire.
Right.
He decided to retire.
Yeah.
Like, if he would have went to Dr. Collins when he was making that decision, he would have said, "No, you don't have to retire." So it was pretty much Grant saying, "I'm a little bit scared. I don't want to deal with this later in life," and making a brash decision for himself as a young person. Once he went to see the expert, he said, "No, there's no issues whatsoever." So I think that, because I've seen that out there, that he had to retire. He didn't have to retire. He made the decision to retire.
Agreed. All right. We've gone 73 minutes here since the show started here on Birds 365. And we've yet to mention any running back on the Philadelphia Eagles. And
running. Who cares?
We've forgotten the Philadelphia Eagles were the #1 running team in the National Football League last year. And we go through an hour and change, and we haven't mentioned the running game once. Johnny Mack, who looked good in the backfield yesterday. Again, no, you don't have your notes to refer to. You don't check it off play after play after play when the running back makes a play, but your
running back. Nobody cares about the running game in the
Jody McDonald does. Come on.
It was funny because I was standing next to our buddy Tim McManus, and right when Jalen threw the interception to Marcus Epps, and the next play was, they were doing red zone work. The next play, they ran a draw to Kenny Gainwell, and that went for a touchdown. I put that in quotes, and I joked to Tim, "All right, they've already gone run first. They've already shipped it from pass first to run first." But yeah, their running backs are fine. I think that's part of the reason you don't hear a lot of talk about them. And when we do talk about it, all right, could they use a bigger back? Yeah, probably. But do they need a bigger back? I think Jalen Hurts himself alleviates some of that need as a short down. I think Boston Scott alleviates that kind of need because he's got sort of a knack for it. They seem to like Kenny Gainwell running when they're spread, when they have 4 receivers on the field, or Goddard's flexed out or something like that. They like to run that draw with Kenny Gainwell. And I think, there's a lot of excitement surrounding him as potential improvement. And then there's Miles Sanders, who, I'll tell you what. All right, I'll give you a bad and a good. Bad first pass of the summer, juggled it, but he caught it. He hauled it in, but he juggled it. He is in tremendous shape, though. I mean, he looks different. You can tell he knows he's got to prove something this year. But he's just a good player. Is he a great player? I talk about it all the time. If you're expecting Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook, you're going to be disappointed. He's not that guy. But he's a good running back. So I think Eagles fans have had weird swings of expectations. After his rookie year, they thought they had a superstar running back. They didn't. Now that they've seen just 800 yards, 900 yards, 730 yards, they say, "Oh, he stinks." He doesn't stink. He's a good player. He was a good player when he was a rookie. He's a good player now. Would you like him to be a better pass catcher? Yes, but you don't need him to be because you have Kenny Gainwell. He's a great pass catcher. Could he be better in pass protection? Yes. But again, he's not going to be playing on third downs a lot. He's not going to be playing on hurry ups a lot. That's going to be Gainwell. And then there's some ball security issues you need to tighten up. And you know, in the 4-minute offense, don't run out of bounds. That's a legitimate criticism. You got to understand situational football a little bit better. But you could do a lot worse than Miles Sanders.
So Kennedy Brooks did nothing that grabbed your attention. You said, oh, shoot, there's a rookie that we can be scrutinizing for the next couple of weeks here before the season.
Well, the thing with running backs, and I joke, nobody cares. I mean, you can't judge a running back till the pads come on. I mean, what are you going to do in that type of atmosphere? So we talk about it in the spring, and we talk about people not liking the running game in the NFL or not caring about the running game in the NFL just till December until they need it. It's tough to gauge running backs when there's no pads and there's no physicality. It's a physical position.
And we'll see how physical they can get. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald, your Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys. We're going to add a third voice to the mix. He does a great job covering the entire National Football League. Oh, we're going to get his Eagle take, that's for damn sure. But we'll touch on a couple of things outside of the city of brotherly love with our next guest, Connor Orr of Sports Illustrated, joins us here on Birds 365.